We are live.
We are live. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to The Turning Point. Hope you're all doing well. We have a lot to talk about, but first, we wouldn't be doing a service if we did not talk about the Olympics. For those who did watch the opening ceremony, it was deeply disturbing. It showcased what appeared to be a satanic ritual, very similar to what you see in a lot of today's dumbed down music videos. And many of us already know how dark the music industry is and notoriously influenced by these dark demonic themes. And this is why we have to be very mindful of what we're watching, what we're listening to these days, because there's a lot of subliminal programming at play through the artwork, the colors, the songs, and the themes. Some music even contains hidden agendas and narratives inside of them, messages when you play them backwards. But this content, my point though, is that it's just pure evil. What we saw was very disturbing, disgusting, mocking Christians, Muslims, and just people all around the world, including Buddhists, promoting perversion. And without getting into too much scripture, I think what we're seeing here mirrors very similar to what the biblical stories of talk about the Sodom and Gomorrah, and also the early stages of the fall of Babylon. And even more interesting is that we're seeing a clear divide between in humanity of what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's evil. Obviously, there are people out there who do support and condone such disturbing material. And I think these are the people out there that don't have their hearts and minds in the right place. And that makes it very dangerous for the rest of us because if you call this stuff out, like we're doing here, you're going to see later on, people are going to start calling us, accusing us of being anti-Semitic, racist, and just discriminatory against human rights and so forth. But my point, though, that there has to be a drawn line because, the perversion is leading to more extreme behavior, like allowing children to undergo gender alteration surgeries. And that's, I think, all this disgusting corruption, what we've seen is bringing us to the current state of moral decline. And just to clarify, that everything we're seeing, this mindset that's being pushed onto us, is about dividing and conquering humanity, to reshape the human body, and even with technology, and just promoting more perversion. So we are in the early stages of societal collapse. And the important thing is that those out there with pure hearts are being shamed, unfortunately, into silence. And we have to change this. This has to change. People need to voice their opinions. We have to draw a definitive line. Because if we don't, eventually these people are going to try to overrun us, and that will lead to violence. And we just can't allow these sick criminals, these pedophiles, to really hide behind equality just so they can dictate how we need to live moving forward. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. I want to hear from you guys. David, let's start with you.
Well, when I didn't view the whole thing, but I saw little clips of it and things like that. And you're right. It's like an attack against anything that represents a position of faith or a standard of, moral consciousness and things like that. And the thing is, it had absolutely nothing to do what these games are about. It had nothing to do with sport, had nothing to do with anything about competitive nature of sport and the joy of all that and all and everything like that. It was not really art. It was just licentiousness on a level of outright debauchery, and I agree with you. I think the imagery that you portrayed there, the whole idea of Sodom and Gomorrah, and we know the story of what it represents. It was a society that had just given over to every base, desire that they wanted. And, historically, we saw what happened there. The whole thing literally collapsed. And so, it was really something truly wild. And, it was actually an embarrassment, that is for sure.
Yeah. Vendel, I'd like to get your take.
It was wild.
Yeah. Disgusting. Vendel, what do you think?
Well, you already know what I think, but what I will say is this just showcases and highlights that there is evil. This just brought them even more out of the shadows and just shows you that there is this other side, this evil, this corruption. And obviously those people that were responsible for allowing that to take place and actually probably directed and produced it do believe in a God, and it's not the God that we believe in, it's the opposite side. So they didn't do that for no reason. There's a very specific, calculated reason for why they did that. And it's obviously not just to mock people that have a strong moral fiber and religious belief, whether you're Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. And I'm not talking about Zionists, real Jewish, which there are not many of them in the real world, actually. There's few, and that do have higher positions in politics, and most of them are Zionists. But they were mocking people that do have a strong religious belief and faith in a superior creator, a being. And that them doing that, taking that action, it's one of many. They do this all the time, but this was pretty significant, and they knew the world was going to see this. Now, whether or not they knew they would get this type of backlash, it's I'm really not sure, to be honest. But I'm glad people are actually boycotting this crap, and it's not healthy from a spiritual standpoint. And yes, this is part of the agenda. I mean, for anybody knows what their ultimate plan is, there's multiple agendas they're trying to achieve simultaneously, and one of them is corrupting the souls of people and disrupting humanity's biological nature, which is a male and a female, and push this other filthy nonsense onto the public. And as more people start to see this over time, if nothing's done about it and it continues, this is how you normalize things.
Yeah. Nicely said.
Yeah.
Edo.
Well, first, I would be surprised if they wouldn't take this occasion to perform sort of a satanic ritual. And I think that's what it has been about. Happily enough, I only watched a couple of minutes. I mean, it was enough for me. I couldn't stand more. I think the degree of degeneration that was displayed on for everyone virtually in the world to watch that. And I think that's very disappointing because they had an opportunity to actually inspire people. I mean, people are there for competing, and they had the Olympics here in Greece in 2004. And I watched some of the highlights of the opening, and it was nothing related to that horrendous political thing that we saw in Paris. So, as someone that is based in Europe, I just say that I am completely ashamed of what France has been doing, especially with this ceremony. We know there are other major problems in Europe right now, but ultimately the end goal has always to be to destroy the traditional family. And I always spoke about this because if you don't have a strong family on society, then you have citizens that are relying on the government, and that's the way that they have been putting this agenda forward. So they send the children away from the mother to, I call it not even universities anymore, I call indoctrination camps. And that's the way they have corrupted society. And what we have witnessed in Paris in this week, for me, is completely embarrassing. And I think us as Europeans should actually do something about it. I think if we keep accepting everything that they have been putting forward, I mean, what's going to be the world 5 years from now? It's scary to think about it.
You make a good point.
It's very scary, actually.
Very, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, it's a deep rabbit hole, and I'm just glad we got to talk about it a little bit. At least give some food for thought. People can think about this and do their part, is to voice their opinions and share their beliefs with other people. That's the only thing we really can do, and that's why I'm just glad we got to talk about it. It's a real service. If you want to serve God, that's how you're going to do it. Tell people what's right and what's wrong. And this is just wrong, and it's just disgusting too. So let's move on now to finance. We saw what happened with the Bitcoin conference. Trump attended, and a lot of other people. The fact that, you know, these big political figures can show up to an event like this, and just the fact that all this marketing for Bitcoin is there. It's just, for me, I'm not surprised, you know, how many people just can't see what's really happening behind it. And, you know, I think many people are really just naive enough to believe whatever they're being told by prominent figures like Trump, Vance, Michael Saylor, Michael Saylor, right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
called him Michael Taylor once, but Michael Saylor, many people don't know this. He's a coke addict who lost $1 billion in the dot-com bubble because he made the wrong bet. I think he's
Mhm.
doing the same thing again. And it's just, there's so much market institutions propping this stuff up behind the scenes, and it's a bubble. And I don't think people have considered even what's taken place behind the scenes, the actions that have already been put and set into motion by the very same institutions people are attacking, yet allowing them to support what Bitcoin advocates are for. So the conference, alongside Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, I think is just part of the larger scheme to seize more ownership of digital assets through smart contracts and so forth.
Yeah.
But it is a Ponzi scheme that's backed by major financial institutions, again, the same ones that Bitcoin advocates are opposing. So that's a conflict of interest right there. And then, of course, there are other aspects to consider, like the technology, the flaws in it, the
Mhm.
origins of the Bitcoin white paper, and who's
Mhm.
backing, again, these projects. So a tweet I
Mhm.
was going to put out is that it's easy to recognize a bubble when you're not in it. And I think many people who are making money in this space are really just getting lucky. They're in the right place at the right time. And what they do is they use that to convince others that they're missing out. That's where the FOMO comes in, thus trapping
Mhm.
a very naive and foolish population who doesn't really understand the underlying transition behind the distributed ledger technology and the
Right.
implementation of the technology into the system. And just to say this, the one percenters, they're never going to reveal their true intentions behind their investments, behind their strategy. Institutions have never given a shit about the public's
Right.
best interest at heart. So if you look behind the scenes on what's happening, everything is already set in motion. I still believe technologies like RippleNet, which we talked about extensively, leverages the digital asset XRP, are already in place, again, for full-scale adoption. Another fact, just to throw out there, is that XRP is unique because it's sovereign, meaning it can resist institutional control, and the one percenters know that. That's why the one percenters are targeting this technology. And my strategy has always been simple. Me and my brother, I speak for both of us. It's quite simple. We follow what the top 1% are doing because you can't beat them at their own game. You could try to,
Yeah.
possibly by owning physical
Right.
assets like gold and silver,
Right.
but this is a massive mind game. And they've been successful, in my opinion. And I still believe that a significant percentage of the population are going to face financial ruin with a predetermined solution in the form of a central bank digital currency or a universal
Mhm.
basic income for those who didn't take time to do their research. And I don't give a crap what Trump said. A lot of
Mhm.
people will say a lot of things, but then if you look again behind the scenes, what they're doing and what's been put into motion. So, David,
That's true.
your thoughts?
Well, when you think of the historical rationale, for Bitcoin because of the white paper that you're talking about there, was to go a kind of against. It was a reaction to the 2008, 2009 kind of deal, and it was supposed to be, a way out of this current financial system. Well, here we watched this conference. And I think it was Senator Loomis that came out and basically threw out there that they're going to table some form of legislation where the Federal Reserve would have to be out there and keep Bitcoin as, a reserve asset. Can you fathom that? I mean, you got the ETFs that are out there, and we can see the major holders of Bitcoin now are, a lot of these massive banks, VanEck, BlackRock, all these, basic trading banks and things like that. They absolutely control the market for Bitcoin right now. So this whole idea that it's decentralized is insane. It's not decentralized. And I think it was RFK that said, look, if he gets elected, he's going to make it so that the United States holds something like, what, 1 million Bitcoin or something to that effect. Right now, I think they control, what, 210,000 Bitcoin is what the US government holds. Look what just happened when Germany dumped 50,000 Bitcoin onto the market.
Yeah.
That was a sheer and utter manipulative move that they did. And I don't think that they did not communicate with a lot of the big players. I believe absolutely that they did. That, and some, were knew this was coming. It would not surprise me to see some short positions that were out there just lapping it up. And this is the deal. They all profess that they want free, open, fair markets. But when you watch their behavior, it's anything but that, right? I mean, we've watched that whole dog and pony show, with Bill Hinman, Jay Clayton, and all the, the whole Ethereum free pass deal, and now look at like what's happening with the holding of these assets. And when you think of XRP and you think of, the ecosystem that it represents, and it does absolutely transcend borders in this regard. Of course, people will throw out there, well, Ripple holds this big escrow. I do believe, okay, there's some, some merit to that observation. But by and large, it's because of the infrastructure that's being laid. You
Right.
said about the one percenters. I think the one percenters have been absolutely at the heartbeat of this transition into this new digital economy. And even with Ripple, XLM, and this and that, these are the folks that are out there working with these guys to develop central bank digital currencies. I mean,
Right.
it's their technology that's doing it. I think putting a person's hope in certain individuals, like people will do with Trump. I mean, even when Obama was running, he became almost a messiah figure, and people are treating Trump like he's a messiah figure. Now he's a human being, and when you pass that threshold of admiration to worship, which it seems like in some cases it's happened, you kind of lose perspective and you're not able to kind of listen to any kind of critical thinking, and say, well, look, how will this play out down the road, kind of thing like that. I think it's vitally important that we do that. Now, I am a libertarian. I'm not going to support any kind of ideology that's going to lead us down the road where it's big government and controlling and pulling all the strings. And we know that it's one of the greatest temptations that most governments around the world are facing when it comes to the ethics behind their central bank digital currencies, right? Because it's all about control and information, the flow of information, who's allowed to participate in the economy, how are they allowed to participate, and on and on. For instance, if we were in a CBDC system right now and we were living in a kind of like a government environment that didn't really like what we're talking about right now, we could finish this conversation and find out that our assets have been limited as to what we're able to do with them.
Mhm.
Maybe we can buy our groceries, okay, but we can't go out and trade that for physical gold. You ever think
Yeah.
of that? I mean,
And
that's kind of
what kind of groceries are we buying too?
yeah, and exactly that. I mean, maybe they'll decide, hey, you bought too much potato chips this week. You're going to have to buy more broccoli before you'll get the credits. I mean, I don't know. We don't know, but we do know this: we lose our autonomy at least.
Mhm.
Where they know every transaction that we ever made. Kind
Yeah.
of thing. And, when I worked in the federal government and in the underground economy and stuff like that, I mean, it was very easy to, we would use, requirements to provide information with banks and that. And it was done ex parte, meaning the person didn't know. And we could build a financial profile, on a person, based on their purchasing history and stuff like that. And you could kind of see things because, people would get assessed for lifestyle assessments because they weren't reporting income, right? So now you're going to assess them on the lifestyle, and you say, okay, now you got to prove, you know, and I'm telling you guys, and that was back in the 90s, the 90s and the early 2000s. You think they haven't moved that pendulum away forward now? Sure they have. And so this is where I think, yeah, we are just it's been following a script, and I think Bitcoin was used as the entry drug for this digital asset space. And I do believe the rug pull is coming, and I think most of the world won't even be ready for it. It's going to be wild.
Yeah. I put a very interesting tweet trying to cover this in a very small message. You only have so many characters to say what you need to say. And I hate having to stretch it out because I don't like when people have to click more because then they're not going to read the whole thing. So I try to keep everything short and condensed, but I really think this is okay. How BlackRock's getting into tokenization. And this is something we
Yeah.
learned from, we already knew this, but we had a discussion
Mm.
with Francis Hunt. By the way, part 2
Right.
comes out tomorrow,
Oh.
where he was saying that BlackRock's heavy in tokenization. But then again, BlackRock has been co-opted with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. So if they wanted to pretty much control and seize all your digital assets, that's one way to do it. And that's, again, why XRP is very unique. XRP actually is sovereign, and it promotes that decentralized financial system where the 1% can wield their influence into the other system.
Mhm.
This is what I was talking about. It's a 2-tier system. Vindel.
Yeah, so a few things I want to say, and I'll make it brief. So there's this false narrative and misconception that I'd like to debunk for a lot of the crypto investors out there. Whether you're an XRP investor, Bitcoin, doesn't matter. You have to get this straight, and please understand this. The misconception is that decentralized finance, the blockchain technology, the XRP ledger is going to make all transactions 100% transparent. So, for example, BlackRock, Larry Fink, all these central bankers, elites, politicians, they'll be transacting and it will all be transparent in the open. Wrong. Not happening. I was a banker for 4 years, and I can assure you that privacy is one of the key elements for banking that will never disappear. Banking will evolve. David and I, we talk about this all the time, and so do Versan and I. Banking will evolve. Their roles will reshape and change as it evolves. But the privacy aspect of it is one of their biggest key elements that keeps them in business. So that's where the private ledger comes in. Banks will use private ledgers for day-to-day transactions. That will be business as usual and will likely settle out. It could be on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, and they'll settle out through the public ledger. And you could have probably the liquidity hub that will be in the middle of this. But the point I'm making is that this whole idea of everything will be transparent, all transactions, for example, Larry Fink moving money, it would be transparent. No, that's the biggest nonsense and misconception I have ever heard in my life. That is not going away. There's going to be private ledgers and public ledgers. Private ledgers will still be day-to-day transactions, business as usual, and then they'll settle out on the public ledgers. And there's plenty of information to solidify that information that I'm giving right now and that claim I'm making, but that's going to be the case. So people have this wrong idea that everything will be open. Not going to happen. Privacy
it won't be
is.
open for, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah. Well, for us, it won't be. They'll have a closed system, like you just said,
Exactly.
and we'll be required through digital identity and all this other stuff, where we will, everything we do will be available. But you're right. Absolutely.
Yes.
This is the way they've always done it. They've always done it like that.
Yeah.
And they are not going to forfeit the opportunity, to have what they've had all along, not on your life. I agree 100% with you.
Yeah. And the thing is, the privacy is, it's a crucial, privacy is one of the most crucial elements, because for the bank, it protects sensitive client information. This is number one. It helps them maintain confidentiality, and it builds trust with their clients. If everything was public, there wouldn't be a private ledger, first of all. And second of all, banks would not be in business because no one would want to conduct business with them. So it destroys their entire business model. What banks are doing is they are evolving as the technology and innovation evolves, where they can still maintain some level of control and not lose everything.
But you're referring to the federated sidechains. That's exactly what you're referring to.
Well, my point is, people think everything is going to be open for, these elites moving money and it's all going to be transparent. No, that's not happening. So get that out of your head. Biggest bullshit I've ever heard in my life. That's not changing. And the truth is, I know people can argue, what if they change the laws? Well, there's this famous Rothschilds quote that goes like this: "Give me control of the nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." And that still applies till today, because if they can control the laws, rig the laws of international finance, the banking system, by lobbying and fancy words of corruption, at the end of the day, they know what's taking place. They know a transition is coming, and they are trying to still stay in control of the wheel by evolving as the technology evolves. As a matter of fact, they are actually the artifacts of it, the architects of it. So just wanted to put that out there. And
Thank
it
you
doesn't
very
mean
much.
it doesn't mean you can't build wealth off this, because you still will, and you still can if you own the technology, because it's a unique financial instrument like XRP or XLM. that will only increase in value, because over time, the supply is going to get squeezed more, because as institutions buy it, they're going to buy and hold it. They're never going to sell it again, because they're going to be using it as a tool. It's almost similar to carbon credits. It's an asset that's only going to go up in price over time.
Agreed. Nicely said, and thank you for clarifying that. And yes, there is going to be an XRP shock in the supply eventually, and that's where I talked about how the price is going to significantly go up, and there's going to be reasons for that. And we've talked about this many times. Edo, I'd like to get your take on it. And also, Edo, you put a very good short out the other day on Twitter, or was it today? Right?
Well, I put in so much content. Which one are you talking about?
Let's talk about the supply shock, but I want to get your take first on everything we talked about.
There is this misconception, especially from Bitcoin maximalists. This is not
100%.
It's not a war. It's not about the tribalism. What I have behind my wall here, that's Bitcoin white paper, because I was once a Bitcoin investor. And that's how I started in crypto. And I had this misconception that banks would disappear, and we live in the beautiful world where all the finances are going to move in Bitcoin. We don't even need the central banks anymore. And all of this idea, initially who invested in Bitcoin had these ideals. You had this, that you are against government and all of this. But this has changed gradually. And if we look today at Bitcoin white paper, you will see that it has failed as a currency. And basically, Satoshi didn't achieve his original plan, which was to make a functional currency. What Satoshi did, actually, well, we can get on very shortly about XRP being introduced later as a solution, and we can also tie that to Satoshi. I did many videos about that. But ultimately, what we see in this Trump convention, for example, you see more sort of a cult, and they are doing everything they can to push the masses to get in Bitcoin. And if you are not getting slightly suspicious that there is an agenda behind it, I think you are going to get in serious problems. Because when is the last time the government wanted retail investors to make money? Can you please remind me? Were they talking about? Where was Donald Trump? That's a good question. Where was Donald Trump when Bitcoin was trading at $500? Where was Donald Trump when Bitcoin was trading at $5,000? Bitcoin now is near the all-time high, and suddenly Donald Trump is embracing it. What a coincidence, right?
Ido, can I add something to what you just said? You know how you said when was the last time? Okay. Well, when was the last time they were trying to push something on the whole world that backfired? It was the shots.
Yeah.
So that was 4 years ago.
4 years ago, exactly 4 years ago. Exactly 4 years ago. And they programmed by the way, that's very coincidental as well. They programmed every Bitcoin halving to happen in the same year as the elections. That's also something that we should pay attention to. And by the way, I had a very viral video about XRP, was getting over 200,000 views on TikTok, and it got removed because I violated the community guidelines. So you don't hear, that's correct. You don't hear the same type of censorship when people are talking about Bitcoin. Actually, that's getting leveraged on social media. You just see that all of these micro sailors, they are being streamed, they are being invited to talk on CNN, on Fox News, everywhere. I mean, the red flags are everywhere. And I don't know, but maybe I am too conservative investor. I don't like buying any type of assets past all-time high. I mean, and let's ask another question. What are central banks actually buying? Let's be more precise. What are BRICS nations buying right now? Are they buying Bitcoin, or are they actually stacking on gold and precious metals? Well, the answer is they are buying gold. They are buying tons of gold, and they have been doing that for the past 5-10 years. Don't you think that
BRICS are buying bricks?
Good one. Yeah, the BRICS are buying bricks.
David.
So using the logics here, they are accumulating precious metals. The same entities that control the future of finances. Central banks are the head of the snake. Nothing happens by coincidence. So if they are dictating finance in a global scale, I would assume that they would be buying Bitcoin at $500, not at $65,000. It doesn't make any sense from every single angle that we analyze this Bitcoin convention theory, and now Bitcoin getting very popular. I just get more and more secure that I am invested in the right assets, and that's not Bitcoin.
Yeah. Nicely
Good,
said.
good
Very good
point.
point, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those who did not see that short, just go to follow Edo on Twitter, on X, and just check it out. He puts a lot of very powerful content out there. In fact, everyone in this space does here. So go check
Yeah,
that
I
out.
was also putting down some very, let me call it how it is, bullshit. That some people say XRP cannot be. I'm not sure if you're talking about this one, but they claim that no, it's impossible for XRP to trade at a high price because the same XRP can be used over and over again. And I was just explaining that's a huge misconception because they don't really understand the concept of nostro vostro accounts. The banks need to have certain basket of currencies which involves foreigner currencies in their balance sheets, so that can facilitate global transactions, and that causes massive liquidity problems. And Vandel, I am sure he's former banker, so he knows even better than myself. The point is that most XRPs will be locked. Every central bank in the world is going to need to have a certain amount of XRPs. Not only
Mhm.
central banks, but we can talk about the IMF, we can talk about the Bank of International Settlements, which happens to be the central bank of central banks. So this theory that the same XRP can be used over and over again, it goes against the principle of the velocity of money. So it's just massive food. I call it how it is.
You're right, and also a tokenomic perspective too. There's only 100 billion, which is a very minuscule. It's a very small amount when you're talking about global liquidity, which just alone Swift is $1 trillion a day, and then you got derivatives markets, and I mean the size and the amount of money flowing around the world from institution to institution it's massive. So 100 billion is nothing.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
Well,
Yeah.
and I also had somebody as well, Edo, had come on and was throwing this whole thing out there that, oh, well, when you look at the hyper efficiency of XRP, and I'm like, well, this is a plus, not a minus. And then we went into look, if you took one XRP and XRP settles in what, 3 to 5 seconds, let's say, and you employed it consistently for 24 hours straight, right? Because in 24 hours, there's what, something like 28,000 or whatever it is, like if you 86,000 seconds in a day or something like that, you divide it by 3 seconds, you get, so I mean, the likelihood of that even happening, if it could happen, is almost non-existent. It's like ridiculous, argument. But this is another FUD that's being thrown out there. Oh, well, it can be just used over and over and over, the same XRP. The likelihood of that happening is next to none. In fact, any of these digital assets, Bitcoin included, it once it's created, it's not like, unless we burn it, if it's in the ecosystem, it can be used multiple times. That's true. But the
Yeah.
fact is it won't.
Mhm.
The fact is it won't, just because of the nature of how money moves. It just won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I may add, also XRP was designed for infinite scalability, meaning there is no limitations on its price. And just as it becomes universally adopted, accepted, and extensively used, which is the case, that's where this is all going, it's eventually going to absorb all the money in circulation. And that's going to improve its liquidity and then drive the price even higher.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Real world asset tokenization is one of the biggest issues when it comes to XRP and the XRP ledger, because almost anything can be tokenized on the XRP ledger. And we know that real world asset tokenization, it is coming hardcore. They're tokenizing gold right now. We're talking about tokenizing other commodities around the wide world. Now, people say, well, certain assets will never be tokenized. That's hogwash. Utter hogwash. You had better believe they're going to be tokenized. I mean, you got Larry Fink out there talking about the tokenization of securities. I mean,
Tokenization of
that is the
trees.
next evolution of the market. And so, I mean, you look at a commodity like oil, which has made the lifeblood of the wide world, let's be honest, and that kind of thing. And look at how it's traded on just in the equities market and commodities markets and future contracts and all this and that. You mean to tell me you don't think that those things are going to be tokenized?
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is now I just want to, what is it called? The Depository Trust and Clearing Corp for the United States. Trillions of dollars of value go through a day in settlement, right? Through the Depository Trust and Clearing Corp. They themselves went and signed up with R3 Corda for, instant settlement, and they were going from a few days to 30 minutes. Well, R3 Corda utilizes XRP and XDC for those settlements. I mean, that's right there. I mean, I think the evidence is all around us. And I think that's where the valuation is going to really come from, because and I bring this up, global money supply is, a lot of people can't fathom. They look at a $2.7 trillion market capitalization for the whole of this digital asset space. That is a proverbial little drop in the bucket. Yep. When you think about, the tokenization that they have planned for this new digital economy.
Yeah. And I always tell people not to sweat the fluctuations in crypto prices. I mean, none of this is really valued the way it needs to be. It's getting there, but the financial institutions are the ones who are going to drive the market, not retail investors. So I just tell people, make sure you're invested and diversified into the right technology so you can sit back and enjoy the damn show.
That's what I do, right? They're driving it now. And a day will come where you will not have access to it. Look, in Canada, they established a law that you cannot invest more than 30,000 Canadian dollars annually into this digital asset space. But you could take your life savings. You could go down to Las Vegas. You could blow that in slot machines all you like. I've just had a few of my subscribers tell me that their bank literally sent them a notification that they will close any account down. This was in Australia, that they caught in trading in cryptocurrency, because they considered that to be money laundering and stuff like this. A major bank. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, when these institutions themselves are hog heavy in it.
Yep.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that's why XRP is an opportunity for everyone to become incredibly wealthy without taking an enormous risk. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, good point.
All right, so Bindo, you want to say something? Because I was going to move on to
I just wanted to say I really love what Edo said when he said that it's no coincidence that the Trump administration is now promoting Bitcoin after how high it's risen, after how long it's been in existence. And it just so happens to be around the bull run, the debt refinance cycle, around the election time. Come on. Look, brother, anybody watching, you are retarded if you think this is a coincidence. Layer everything together and look at the time frames and the charts. Everything lines up to every 4 years. The debt refinance cycle, liquidity being pumped in the system to refinance the previous debt and the interest, the Bitcoin halving, the bull run, the elections, and now promoting Bitcoin. Now, people ask, oh, would you ever attend this on Twitter? And I said, yeah, let me know when they promote a digital asset or crypto that hasn't risen 106 million%, then maybe I'll consider. But that's how much it's risen, and now they're promoting it. And it could go a little higher, but just be real. You're not going to create any wealth off that. It's an instrument for the wealth to build more wealth. That's the wealthy, the ones who are the insiders, the market makers. And because they have so much of it and can afford so much, if it goes up 3%, they just made so much money. But when you're talking about retail investors, little guys, most people don't even have $5,000 in their bank account. I mean, don't expect that to change your life. It's not going to. The gems, the hidden utility, the future digital assets that will immensely rise in value are the ones they are not talking about.
That's right. Like I said earlier, they'll never have your best interest. They're not going to share their strategy.
It's too late.
Right.
Like I said, what government wants you to? When is the last time a government wanted you to really make money off of anything? I think
Yeah,
that's very telltale.
so it's so true. David, I wanted to get your take on something. I didn't do enough research into it myself, but the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Bill. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, Senator Loomis came out and she threw this out there. And the whole idea was that the Federal Reserve would be holding on to Bitcoin as a reserve asset. I'm like, they're basically treating it like a tier one asset, like gold, aren't they? I mean,
Hmm.
central banks around the world, we know, are buying gold like crazy. Well, it's a fool's gold, really. Bitcoin would be a fool's gold, for the retail, and they throw that out there. Now, will this really see the light of day? She presented it at the Bitcoin conference, and I don't know if it would ever really pass. They're all talking about, how they would do this and that the Federal Reserve would be holding on to Bitcoin as a reserve asset. Well, I often think they already are. I mean, come on. Do you think the Satoshi wallet that holds 1 million Bitcoin, when Bitcoin came out in 2009, the average person didn't even know what SHA-256 was. And remember who came up with SHA-256? It was the NSA. And who worked at the NSA at the time? It was an early developer, of the Bitcoin network. And that was David Schwartz, by the way, one of the founding members that created the XRP ledger. And, back in the day, I think it was the DOJ had gone and interviewed the Satoshis, 4 of them, and this is where, a lot of people really do, this whole idea is just insane to think that somebody has been sitting on 1 million Bitcoin while it's gone up from nothing to $70,000. I honestly do believe that my guess is it's probably a government agency that's holding on to that. I that's my personal belief. I wish I had the evidence to prove it, but there's no way that's an individual. I don't care who they are.
Of course
You
not.
know,
I think
because
it is.
they'd be the wealthiest person on earth practically.
Yeah, but real quick, guys, I want to play a clip for you. In fact, I have 2 clips I do want to show, but I'm going to show this one first, and we'll save the next one for later. This is from my discussion with Martin Armstrong. Those who have watched it, he did share his background a little bit. He worked with the central banks. He's worked with governments for more than 50 years. He was an insider at one point, got booted out, and they even put documentaries out there about him called The Forecast. Just check this out. Listen to what he said. And I think it's interesting because, he just confirmed what we already know here. So I'm going to play this. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. Covering the 1996 white paper from the National Security Agency on how to mint a digital currency. It's called SHA-256. Shortly after the 2008 financial crisis, they put a Band-Aid on it to bury the mess that we're now experiencing. And then Bitcoin emerged as a deception, in my opinion, to convince the masses that there was a way to fight the banks at their own game, which is obviously not true. Can you explain how you came to the conclusion that Bitcoin was a government experiment?
I've dealt with governments for 50 years, and they float a balloon. That's what we call them, to see if it flies. All right, Bitcoin was out there marketed. Oh, this is the way. It's going to replace the dollar. That's going to be the reserve currency. They can't shut it down. All this. It's outside the central banks. I mean, this was all just absolute nonsense. If you're really looking at creating something that's really anti-government, why would you use blockchain so they can trace every little transaction? If I give you $100 bill, they don't know where I got it from. But if I give you 100 Bitcoin, they know where I got it from, and that guy knows where they got it. That's not privacy. All right. That is their ultimate goal.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, like I said, I've been in meetings, I've been warning them that this is going to collapse. This system that they have created with perpetual debt is not going to be sustainable.
I just thought that was interesting, guys. His perspective is very unique, and I wanted to share that with everyone.
That's how I see it. That's
Did you
the
guys,
plan.
were you guys able to hear it, by the way?
Yeah, it wasn't as loud, but it's definitely heard. Well, that was just and
Next
the
time I'll
thing
make
is,
it louder.
No, it was good enough. But I agree 100%. Like, I mean, you cannot look at it. I think if you take an independent look at it, and from when it came out, what was going on in the world financially at the time, and the whole idea that was behind it, and everything like that, and it's can I share? I was back in that time frame. I was working in the underground economy as a special enforcement officer for the tax department in Canada. So that was between 2008 and 2011. And Bitcoin came out, of course, as we know, in 09. By 2010-11, do you realize a lot of people in the underground economy were utilizing it as a means of consideration? Why? Because they believed it was untraceable. It was probably one of the biggest mousetraps that had ever been set for these folks, because it was very easy to track it all down. And that's what we were doing. Like, it was part of what we would look into when we would look into these people that did not want to report all their income and this and that and how they were transacting. And they were looking for a means of consideration outside of the system. Well, the thing is, it was probably one of the most traceable forms. And so what he's saying there is absolutely right. It was the absolute loss of privacy. It
And
wasn't
you
the
know
dream.
firsthand, because this
Yeah.
was a piece of
Mhm.
this was an element of your work that you conducted
Yeah.
on a regular
Yeah.
basis, David.
Yes, that's what we did. Yeah. We
And that's the thing.
track the money. Mhm.
It makes perfect sense, because from a logical standpoint, you don't have to be a genius, but if you want to be outside the system, it's cash. Okay, it's obviously worked for years and decades, but they don't like it because they can't track it. All right, that's
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
that's it. That's all
And
it is.
taxes too. They want to be able to tax
Okay.
you,
Yep.
even if you didn't want to pay your taxes. They could just
Can't
confiscate it like that, since it's digital.
you can't say
Yeah.
cash doesn't work. It does work, and they don't like it
Yeah.
because
Well,
they
they
can't track everything.
Mhm. Well,
Oh,
and look at you got in Europe. Edo knows this. They've literally established legislation that makes it a criminal act to transact in over €1,000. That is insane. It's the legal tender, and yet you can't take $5,000 and literally go down there and buy that used car from the guy down the street without committing a crime if you use cash. Isn't that right, Edo?
100%. That came from the president of the European Central Bank,
Christine,
Christine Lagarde. Yeah, Christine.
Who used to be the head of the
Um,
IMF, by the way.
Yep.
yeah,
Zionist
and
lady, by the way.
who has a picture with Ripple, Brad
That's
Garlinghouse,
right.
by the way.
Yeah,
We
they've
could go on
already
with
set the
many, by
stage,
the ways.
guys.
I mean, you can see the handwriting on the proverbial wall. Come on.
Yeah,
no,
I
she
mean,
spoke constantly.
at this point, really, it's a waiting game. It really is. And
Mm.
what needs to be, I think, what we need to pay attention to a little bit is the show that we see in the political drama, and that's really what's captivating the public attention. And
now.
I'm going to shift the conversation, guys, into what we're seeing in the political drama. There's a lot of bullshit going on between Biden and Harris. Okay. And just to clarify one more time, that regarding the political system, it's so clear they're both corrupt, they're easily bought off, and we don't have real representation. This is clear. But the reason they're achieving this is not just to consolidate more control on the masses, and this is going to tie into the next video I'm going to show you guys, but the goal is, again, to break the trust intentionally between the people and the governments so they can justify the political reform. So the Biden-Harris administration it's all bullshit. And, it's very dangerous, though, I understand, because these people are psychopaths and they're taking us down a very dark path. And if I can go a little bit further, I want people to understand that the strategy that they're using to divide and conquer, the divide and conquer tactics, is very simple. It's like this. So what they do is they have very bad people in Congress and the Senate who have made publicly their intentions, their negative image, very clear to the public. And what they'll do is these bad actors will support something that is true and right. And what that does is it creates a situation, a dilemma, because the average person cannot stand behind that individual because of their bad background, even though they're fighting for something good. And then at the same time, you have good people who are still corrupt and bad too, supporting harmful actions like going to war. And many people will support that because they only see the good side without really understanding the bad side behind their past and realizing that they're all corrupt. And it's a manipulation that is so powerful that makes people think based on surface level perception about what's right and what's wrong, even though both sides are corrupt. And I keep telling people that the real war is here in America. It's against our own governments. It's against, we're like 7 billion people against what, like 400 or 500 people who really run the world.
And
They're the ones creating the chaos and division in our society. And it even ties us into the financial landscape and the economic hardships that they're putting on people. And because of this situation, that people are too blind to see the divide and conquer strategy. And that leads us to support bad actors and vice versa, creating an illusion of what's right and wrong again. And I keep telling people we're at the point where individual thought is breaking down. People no longer really think for themselves. And I think this is one of the biggest problems in America and the rest of the world. And I hate to say this, but I think America has become an embarrassment to the world and even humanity to a degree, because it has allowed the propaganda machine to shape public opinions more than anywhere else on the planet. And don't get me wrong, other places in the world, they have their issues too, but it's because the deep state's reach is extensive and they reach people all over the world. But just generally, people thinking for themselves is under threat. And, that's something I can attest to because I've lived outside the country as well. And I see that in other countries, people tend to think more for themselves and not be beaten by the propaganda machine, unlike what you see in the West. And of course, the West is really the one pushing all this satanic influence throughout the world, this disgusting woke propaganda as well, and so forth. So just macro view on the political drama. It's all bullshit.
Yeah, it is. It's a big theater act. I commented today, there was an article that came out that, in the last few months of Biden's administration, he wants to go and promote a constitutional change for the Supreme Court, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I put this out there and I was saying, like, do you really believe that they would, if these current Supreme Court justices were, of that camp, do you think that they would go out and do this? Well, the whole thing is really theater, because the reality is we know there's a lot of influence, that's given over to a lot of these, institutions. And the third branch of government in the United States is the judicial branch, right? And it's supposed to operate separate, independent from, the executive branch, and of course from the legislative branch. And so it's this, three-legged stool, if you will, and all branches are supposed to have their own role. Well, if now that you got a situation where they want to change the constitutional construct of what this republic looks like, what you're really talking about there is taking off one of the legs, where one branch can literally influence, and it's a consolidation of power. And this is really where they want it to go. And and also to throw out there, what they're really proposing is term limits on justices, number one. Number two, which sounds nice in the beginning, but really what's that talking about is talking about influence, right? And then of course they want to establish a code of ethics. Well, who gets to determine what those ethics are? I mean, I've seen a ton of different codes of ethics that would be anything from ethical. I mean, right now, code of ethics, if we were to take the woke crowd, code of ethics would mean that, you have to use the he, her, them, they, thus, and what, and all this and that, and the utter confusion of it all, or that a 9-year-old can go in and talk to a doctor about gender, transitioning without even the parents knowing. Now, hey, for me, that's not ethical, but that would fit within their frame of what's ethical. See? And this is the whole deal. It's like they will drum up this, they will campaign on this, they will get the rah-rah out of it and all this and that, and it'll sound all rosy and everything. But who at the end of the day is deciding what the litmus tests for these things are? And another one they want to throw out there is they want to make it so that, and and this is what they say, oh, no one should be above the law. Therefore, we want to make it that a sitting president is not exempt from crimes that they commit in the office. Okay, fine. who decides what those crimes are once you're out of office? We're not talking about, see someone taking a gun and blowing someone away and he's exempt from. No, what we're talking about here is, what they're doing right now, the weaponization. And there's a goal in mind because it's all about divide and conquer. Like you just said, it's about fomenting this kind of great divide with people to the point where they have literally and they sit back. It's like, I had a sister as a sibling, and my brother and I. And what my sister would do, she'd go out there and instigate a big thing. And then once the snowball got rolling, she'd step back and let the whole thing unfold, right? Well, that's kind of what they're doing. These 1% leaders that have an agenda here, they're just getting all of the mess going. And then they just kind of step back and let it go and do what they wanted it to do. They get their end result. They get the instability. You're right. Most people are not exercising critical thinking, Bersan. Interesting. I was watching, I think her name is Whitney Webb, and she was a commentator. I was listening to this gal talk, and she was talking about like the dependence on AI for a lot of content and stuff like that. A lot of people are doing. And one of her concerns was, and it's been, shown to be medically true, that because people do not use certain faculties like for problem solving and things like that, they end up losing the ability to do that. Why? Because they haven't exercised those parts of their brain, the synapses, the organ itself, not just the mind, but because the mind is not, being stimulated. Well, the brain is not reacting to that. It's not creating that
like the muscle
matter that we need. The muscle. Yes, exactly. Mental muscle. That's perfect analogy. And as a result, we get to a society or a change in society where people just aren't able to think outside the box for themselves that way. And this was one of her concerns about the reliance on AI to do our thinking for us. Well, we're almost there. It's kind of crazy. And I think, Edo, you were talking about something earlier about the hormonal aspect. Maybe you can throw that out there.
Would you like to go, Edo? Go ahead.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? I was a bit muted, I think. Yeah. Yeah, well, I was saying before privately, before we start this live streaming, that it's part of the agenda also to destroy the hormones, both for men and women. I would argue that the real pandemic nowadays is like low testosterone for men, for example. If you compare the testosterone is dropping 1% by year. And if we keep going in this direction, what are going to be the testosterone levels of the next generation when they are in their 20s, in their 30s, which they should be with high testosterone levels? And I'd say the same for women with their respective hormones. But the whole point I'm trying to make here is that by poisoning the foods that we eat, because nowadays the problem goes even beyond, because these children are already being born with the disruptive hormones because their mothers are being fed things that are intoxicated. They are putting poisonous elements on their bodies. We all know what happened with this. I will not mention further about, because we don't want the life to go down. However, think about animals in nature and how they have this sense of intuition. My family, we have a farm. I remember when I was younger, I was watching like there's gonna be rain. It's gonna rain a lot, and I see the cows going up the hill, and you just wonder how the animals can sense certain things in nature. And I would argue that we have the same capabilities, and that's called intuition. And we as human beings are given intuition. And for me, hormones do have consciousness. You do know some people that have this capability to sense what's going to happen next. And you can just predict. And that goes for the markets, that goes for when someone is lying to you. And that's really the hormones working as they should. And that's called consciousness for the hormones. So by creating a society that don't have functioning hormones anymore, you have a society that's dumbed down, that only reacts and doesn't think critically. It's a society that is in a constant state of reacting, and extremely emotional. And just see the symptoms of a man that has low testosterone levels is to be extremely reactive, and everything bothers him. And that's what they are building with society. So we have a society that doesn't have functional hormones, that are completely intoxicated with heavy metals, with every type of poisons that they are putting on the foods. Can even talk about what they are spraying on the skies, but I don't want to get too conspirational here. But it's
Well,
very
you're
incredible.
being realistic about the situation, and if I can add something before I
Not
let my brother speak.
conspiratorial. Mhm.
Well, real quick, it's not conspiracy. You know, how
No.
many conspiracies have to come true for people to realize that this is really happening? But you are what you eat. And if you're putting poison in your body, that's going to have an effect on your mind, the way you think, and your body as well. Another thing for the men out there, to keep your testosterone levels up, ginger and garlic and is a great way to go.
And squats.
I always eat
And,
raw ginger. I know it tastes like crap, but
yeah,
if you can eat some raw
and
ginger, it really keeps your
most interesting, the things they tell us to avoid are the things that actually are good for our hormones. Take
yeah.
sun, eat saturated fats, animal fats, butter, red meat, and that's the exact same things they are telling you. You
Mhm,
should avoid
mhm.
that at all costs because it's actually going to increase your cholesterol levels. Well, we can get in all of that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's deep, I
Yeah.
promise you. They
Mhm.
control everything. They control the food industry, and you eat the foods, you get sick, and guess what? Now you need to go for the pharmaceutical industry, right? And then you're gonna treat the symptoms from the poison that you are putting on your body, because that's what we are doing on a daily basis. If you're not taking care
Mhm.
of what you are eating, it's even in the toothpaste. I get my toothpaste, interesting enough, from a Russian market, and by default they don't have fluoride.
Yeah.
I
If you
get
are
mine
taking
from India.
fluoride, yeah,
Mhm.
they are injecting uh, toxicity in your body, something that is chemical. You should have a prescription to use fluoride. Yet
Mhm.
everyone is using toothpaste with fluoride, and that destroys the thyroid. That actually
Mhm.
dumps down the population, and that's what they have been doing for the past decades. And I think we are at the point
Mhm.
that all this process is already completed. They don't have to do anything anymore. 90% of the people are just
Not
going with their
much.
agenda. And the outcome is a mass of individuals that don't have critical thinking anymore, don't have hormones, don't have moral values. And that's a very scary place to be
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
sad.
when you are surrounded by
Beautifully
these
said,
people.
and thank you for putting that out there, Edo,
Well,
because
that's
health is a very important contributing factor in this whole transition, anyways. So, Vendel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say Edo's right. That's how they dumb you down. They don't just poison your body; they poison your mind. And of
Mhm.
course, with chemicals, misinformation, propaganda, subliminal programming, subconscious programming through music, mainstream media, TV shows, everything. It's poisoning your body and your mind. So,
Right.
yes, this affects your intuition on a hormonal level. It affects your judgment, and that's how they keep you dumbed down. And they have to do this because if they don't, uh, their agenda and their plans will not work out as well as they want it to. They will
Mhm.
get a lot of backlash from people like us, and we're actually a minority. So imagine if
Minority.
everybody was functioning with a clear mind, strong intuition, good faith, the system would be collapsing already as we speak because
Yeah.
people would figure out what's going on. And a lot of people would say the system is broken, it's not working right. That's what we're thinking. But do you know what the elites are thinking? They're thinking, no, it's working just how it should. This is
Yeah.
how they like it. Okay. That's
Mhm.
what they're thinking. So
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be fixed, it needs to collapse
Mhm.
I
because
think
it's not working.
this is a very powerful conversation we've had here so far.
Um, well, one thing I'd like
Mhm.
to add is what my brother was saying about the politics. It's really called psyops, all right? Psychological operations, military operations. It's when they play bad cop and good cop on a political stage so that they earned your trust because you don't like the evil crap that the other guy's doing. But in fact, they're both evil. They're basically giving you two options. Choose one shitty apple out of the two shitty options you have. That's basically what they're doing. And
True.
you will lean
Yeah.
more
No,
towards
true.
one or the other because you have a natural bias because
Mhm.
they earned your trust years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how they work. It's a psychological operation. Ultimately, regardless who serves in office, Biden,
Mhm.
Trump, For God's sakes, I could serve, okay? At the end of the day, the outcome is going to be the same. It doesn't
gonna be the
matter who serves in office, who's the president, who's the vice president. It may be different in the short term, which route they take, but it will all lead to the same destination. Because
the
at the end of the day,
conclusion.
the problems are never going away. For example, people think, okay, Trump will come in, and I'm not taking sides here. I look at the facts, okay? And I know how they play these games. People think, oh, Trump comes in, he's going to fix inflation. Okay, well, first of all, it doesn't work like that. Inflation is a gradual thing that has to have pain in order to fix it, okay? So they left the pain out. But even if you do fix inflation, just because inflation comes down, don't get that confused with prices going down, because there's a difference. Inflation is a whole different thing from the cost of your goods and prices coming down. That is not happening, okay? Prices never go down. They only go up. So little things like that people should be aware of. It doesn't matter who's running the show. The outcome and where we're going will take us to the same destination. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Nicely said.
I think with your point there, one of the, a big tell would be, look, we just went through this whole assassination attempt of Trump. In the past, that would have been front and center for a long time. Look how quickly we've moved on.
Yeah.
Just like that. I mean, that was phenomenal. You take that back just a few decades, that would have been on the top of people's mind for a good while. Man, have they ever conditioned us to be absolute addicts to new dynamics? And boy, they're ready to supply a narrative almost daily.
You are right, David.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, if you listen to what the news is saying, they're saying we'll bring out the facts. We're waiting on new details. And this is something Francis Hunt alluded to. Like, the facts from who? The very same corrupt institutions that lied to you to begin with. So it's just hogwash,
Mhm.
But gentlemen, we have went over an hour. I got
Yeah.
things to do, and I know you do too.
Yeah.
So this was a phenomenal conversation. I'm glad we got to talk about everything. Do you guys want to put some final words out there? Keep it short if you guys can.
I would say this, guys. I always am going to bring it back to this point. The people on this panel are out here to the best of their ability to give you food for thought, not to make decisions for you, but to give you information so that you can have that critical mind and make those decisions for yourself. Now, I would just like to promote my friends here in this capacity. These guys here, they actually go out there, they make themselves available where you can actually get coaching one-on-one with these people. And I'll tell you what, the value that you get when you do that is truly phenomenal. And I would just, encourage you, just seek some of this counsel out. If you're thinking about these things, they have your best interests at heart. We all want you to make it. We want you to make it. That is a fact. We know that we're going to get shot down for really coming out and saying a lot of things that we do and laying it on the line there, and this and that. But there is a small window, in my estimation, of opportunity available to people to educate themselves for what's coming. And that window one day is going to close. Don't let it close on you. You owe it to yourself to get as much information as you can, before that happens. And, you're talking with people there that literally these guys have access and conversations with some major players, on the global scale. This interview with Mr. Hunt and stuff like that, you have a resource there. And I just say, for your benefit, you might want to go out there and use it. And we care about you, that's for sure.
Thank you very much. That was very kind of you, David. I really appreciate it.
True,
Vice versa, same goes to
Yeah.
you as well.
Yeah.
Please, to the audience, thank you for all your support and your kindness, and just please share this information with people if you can. Subscribe to the channel, follow us on X. We're always putting out good information, and we don't like any of the noise out there like some of the other channels are doing. So, Edo, any final words? Want to say bye?
Yeah, just want to send a special thanks for the kind comments. We had almost 2,000 people, and surely thousands of people will watch the repetition, which you can find on the multiple channels that we have streamed today. And lately, please be very careful with scammers. Don't send your XRP to nobody, and don't trust, because
Agree.
there is many of them that are creating fake accounts of myself, of Versan, of Vandel, of David. We will not actively reach you out asking for XRPs or anything that will double your money in like 20 minutes. This doesn't exist in the world of crypto. So please be very mindful with the fake accounts, because every week someone is being scammed and they are texting me very sad. And being
I
scammed
know.
in XRP is like losing money on steroids. It's like, it's worse, you know. So please be very careful, everyone.
Yeah.
Good. Well said. Well
Um,
said.
you know what? I might as well throw this out there. Somebody has been impersonating me on Telegram. I do not use Telegram
Okay.
ever. It's just too many damn applications. I am so sick of being on my phone. So please just don't do that, okay? And there's one channel person impersonating me on Instagram as well. I have a very low profile on Instagram, so if you're going to follow me, it'll be in the link in the description below. Vandel, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want people to think. Don't have a weak mindset and believe that a white knight is going to come here and save the day. At the end of the day, God gave you a mind, intuition, and tools, and you have to use your tools, your mind, and your resources. Do not ignore the facts and just think someone's going to save you. You have to take action yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be filled with regret. You're going to get obliterated. Or you can acknowledge the facts and the truth, put your ego aside, and make a plan to take action so that you can make the best outcome out of the crappy situation that's coming.
Yeah.
So you choose your destiny.
Wonderful. Okay, guys, everyone have a great day, and thank you again to the audience. Take care.
Take care.